You know what is probability? Well, probability is the science of chance. Now, probability actually analyzes uncertain situations and tell us what is the chance of that happening. Well, whenever you studied any other chapters such as, say, geometry, what did you do? You had to first learn the basic terms used in geometry, such as area, perimeter and all. So let's see what are the basic terms in probability that will help us to learn probability in a better way. Now, we'll study those terms with an example. Say you've gone to watch a match of India versus Australia at Eden Gardens, a cricket match. So now we'll see how the terms of probability connect with this example. So the basic term in probability is experiment. Now what is an experiment? Well, in probability, an experiment means an activity that leads to a set of clearly defined outcomes. Now what does that mean? Let's go it slowly. Well, an activity, well, something that takes place that leads to a set of clearly defined outcomes. Well, any activity will lead to a result, an outcome. So an activity will lead to some outcomes, and those outcomes should be clearly defined. We should know what can be the outcomes of that situation or that activity. Well, in our case, we can say that India versus Australia cricket match at Eden Gardens is such an activity of whose we can get a set of clearly defined outcomes. Well, can you tell me what will be the outcomes after the match ends? Well, you can say after the match ends, either India can win or Australia can win, or it can be a match that is draw. So I can see that this match has 3 outcomes and it is a set of clearly defined outcomes. There is no confusion about it. So the clearly defined outcomes are India wins, Australia wins, or it is a draw match. So this is an experiment. So I can say that India versus Australia cricket match at Eden Gardens, this is an experiment because it is an activity that leads to a set of clearly defined outcomes. So now you know what is an experiment. Now answer me this. A student appears for mathematics examination. Is this an activity? First of all, tell me that. Well, yes, this is an activity. Now, is this an experiment? Now, can you tell me whether this is an experiment? Well, what is an experiment? It is an activity that leads to a set of clearly defined outcomes. So let us check whether this activity has some outcomes or not. Well, a student, if he appears for mathematics, what will happen? Either he will pass or he will fail. Well, there can be only 2 outcomes. Now, you are sure about these 2 outcomes? There is no confusion about it. So, either he can pass or either he can fail. So, this is an experiment. Why is this an experiment? Because this is an activity that leads to a set of clearly defined outcomes. Now, here again we have an activity. A lady listens to music. This is an activity. Now, is this an experiment? Can you tell me? Well, if we move to the definition of experiment, what did we learn? It is an activity that leads to a set of clearly defined outcomes. So, this activity, does it lead to clearly defined outcomes? Well, what can be the outcome of this activity? Well, she can go and do some work. She can go and read a book. She can go and sleep. Well, there can be unlimited outcomes of this. So, we do not know actually what will be the outcomes of this activity. And it is not clearly defined also. So, this is not an experiment. Now, we move to the second term, that is random experiment. Well, experiment can be classified as random experiment. Now, what is a random experiment? Let's see. Well, we know we have an experiment here, India versus Australia cricket match at Eden Gardens. This is an experiment and we have seen that. Now, what are the outcomes here? India wins, Australia wins, or draw? Well, any of these three can happen. So we can say that each of India wins, Australia wins, or draw have a fair chance of happening. You know that either India can win, Australia can win, or it can be a draw match. So all these three have a fair chance of happening. But do you know in the starting of the match whether which will happen? Well, no, that is why we go to see a match, for that excitement. So this is a random experiment. Now what is a random experiment? A random experiment is an experiment or a process for which the outcome cannot be predicted with certainty. Like here, I may say to my friend that no, I know that India will win. But can I say that with certainty? Well, no. I have that confidence on my team, but then that is not certain that India will win. So this experiment will be called as random experiment because we do not know the outcome of it with certainty. Now let's see the examples of this. Rolling a die. Can you tell me, is this a random experiment? Well, first of all, tell me, is this an experiment or not? Rolling of a die. Now you know that to be an experiment, it has to be an activity that leads to clearly defined outcomes. Now when we roll a die, we know I can get a number of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6, any of these 6. So I can say that it has a set of clearly defined outcomes. I'll get a number amongst those 6 numbers only. So this is an experiment. Now when I am rolling a die, I do not know the outcome of it. I know the outcome will be from those 6 numbers, but what will be the exact outcome? I am not sure of it. So this will be a random experiment. So I can say that yes, rolling a die is a random experiment. Now, rising of the sun. Is this a random experiment? Well, I know that rising of the sun is a sure happening. It has to happen. Now, I know that the rising of the sun will always take place in the east. So, I am sure about it. I do not have any doubt. I do not know, is there a question like the sun might rise in the east or in the west and we'll get to know that after it rises? No, I am sure that the rising of the sun will take place in the east. So, it is not a random experiment. So now you are clear with experiment and random experiment. Now we come to a term called trial. Now what is a trial? Well, trial is repetition of an experiment. Well, just now we were rolling a die. Now when we play Ludo, say we play Ludo, do I roll a dice only once? No, I need to roll it again and again. So rolling of that die again and again will be called a trial. Again, let's see it with that experiment we were doing in the beginning. India versus Australia cricket match at Eden Gardens. Now, how will it become a trial? Now, suppose there were 22 matches played between India and Australia. Okay, cricket matches at Eden Gardens only. So, the 22 matches played and the next any match which is about to be played are all trials of this experiment. Now you need to notice that the trial should be exactly the same as the experiment. No change in the experiment will be accepted as a trial. For example, India versus Australia cricket match at Eden Gardens. So the trial of this experiment should be exactly India versus Australia. It should be a cricket match and it should be played at Eden Gardens itself. Now for suppose I was rolling the die, okay? So I was rolling the die which was having 6 faces. Now I want to do that experiment again. So I started doing it with 2 dice. Okay. So now can I say that rolling those 2 dice is a trial of rolling that 1 dice? Well, no, because I am repeating that experiment, but that experiment is changing. Why? Because first I was doing it 1 die and the next time I was doing it with 2 dice. So the experiment was not exactly the same. I need exactly the same experiment repeated again and again for a trial. Now let's see this. Now India versus Australia cricket match at Eden Gardens is an experiment. Now India and England cricket match at Eden Gardens. Is it a trial or not a trial of this experiment? Tell me. Well, I can see that this trial is not exactly the same as my experiment. What is the difference? My experiment has Australia and this trial has England. So this experiment is not a trial of this experiment. So this is not a trial of the above experiment. Now what about this? A hockey match between India and Australia. Well, is it exactly the same? No, because here it is having a hockey match, but in our experiment we are having a cricket match. So this is also not a trial. Now, let's see this. Any cricket match between India and Australia. Now, is this any cricket match between India and Australia? No, it is the match at Eden Gardens only. So this is also not a trial. So now you know that we will not accept any changes in the experiment for it to being a trial. So now you are familiar with experiment, random experiment, trial. Now we move to sample space. What do you think sample space is? Well, let's see from this example again. India versus Australia cricket match at Eden Gardens. This is our experiment. Now what are the possible outcomes? You are already familiar with it. India can win, Australia can win, or it can be a draw match. So we are having these three possible outcomes. Now sample space is actually these possible outcomes only. We use the term sample space to define possible outcomes of an experiment. So we can say that the sample space that is denoted with S can be India wins, Australia wins, and a draw match. So all the possible outcomes that you know of an experiment are defined with sample space. So sample space is actually all possible results or outcomes of an experiment, and it is denoted by the capital letter S. Now, rolling a die, we were doing that. Can you tell me what will be the sample space of that rolling a die? Well, it can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can get any of those 6 numbers. So the possible outcomes are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This will be the sample space of the experiment of rolling a die. Now let's see an example here. We have a bag that contains a blue ball, a green ball, and a red ball. So we are having a bag. Inside that we are having a blue ball, a green ball, and a red ball, all of equal sizes and the same material. So all are exactly the same, only the color is different. Now a ball is picked from this bag. Can you tell me what will be the sample space for this experiment? Well, what is the experiment? That ball is picked from this bag. Now either I can pick a red ball or a green ball or a blue ball. That depends upon the chance. So what will be the sample space? Sample space will be blue, green, or red. Any of these three can come. So only these three are possible outcomes. So the sample space will be blue, green, or red. Can the sample space include a black ball? Well, no. In my bag, I am having only 3 balls. So I can either take out blue, green, or red. I don't have any other option. So the possible outcomes are only these, not black or any other color. So the sample space will be blue, green, and red. Now you are familiar with sample space also. Now we have a term called sample points. Well, just now you saw that sample space of this example, where we are having blue ball, green ball, and red ball, will be blue, green, and red. Now sample point is very easy. Now each of this possible outcome will be called as sample point. Each of them. So this will also be called as sample point. Even this will be known as sample point. So each outcome or each result of the sample space will be known as sample point. Now, so what is a sample point? Sample point are each basic outcome or result in the sample space. Now, if we collect all the sample points together, what will we get? We'll get the sample space. Blue, green and red separately are known as sample points. And collectively, they will be known as sample space. So you are now familiar with sample points and sample space. Now suppose we are having an experiment here, tossing a coin. Okay. Now can you tell me the sample points of this experiment? Tell me. First tell me what will be the outcomes or what are the possible outcomes of tossing a coin. Either you'll get heads or either you'll get tails. So these are the only two possible outcomes of the experiment, tossing a coin. Now what are sample points? Sample points are each basic outcomes. We know that the tossing a coin will have these two possible outcomes. Now each of this is called a sample point. So if I ask you what is the sample point or what are the sample points of tossing a coin, you will tell me heads and tails. So now you are familiar with the basic terminology of probability. So first of all, experiment. It is an activity that leads to a set of clearly defined outcomes. You should know the outcomes clearly. There should be no confusion about it. Now what is random experiment? It is an experiment of whose result we do not know in advance with certainty. What is a trial? The repetition of these experiments is called trial. It needs to be exactly the same as the experiment. Now what are sample space? Well, all possible outcomes of an experiment are known as sample space. Now what are sample points? Each outcome in the sample space are called sample points. And all the sample points taken together are referred to as sample space.